All right.
Hello, boss lady. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
I am living the dream. Thanks for joining me today on the program. I can tell by your title, boss lady,
hmm
you are someone who's in charge, driving hard in your business. Tell me a little bit about your business, where you were, where you are, and where you're going, because I know you're going strong.
Oh yeah, we're going strong. We're really just getting started. So we're here in Indianapolis, Indiana. So we focus on really commercial and multifamily HVAC, plumbing, and drain services. We're here, man. I mean, you just start. You have a good idea and you go for it. You start and you roll with it. You just keep building and building and building and building, the business. I mean, that's what we've done. And we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going. We're
Yeah.
just getting started.
Would you consider what you do a niche? And before you answer that,
Mhm.
I know that there's other companies in your space that service your customer,
Right.
which is basically going to be the landlord, the property managers, the people who own and run those businesses, really, versus the homeowner. A lot of people I talk to on the podcast do residential work. Same type of work, same type of equipment for the most part,
Mhm.
but the customer's totally different. Is that niche, or are you just within a smaller industry than the people who do residential?
Different niche.
Okay.
It functions on the outside. It seems like it's the same kind of company.
Mhm.
The equipment is similar, but the needs of the client is really different. The sales process is different. And how you have to approach situations is completely different because now we're, a homeowner, yes, everybody has budgets, right? Homeowners have budgets, but then when you get into multifamily and stuff like that, now you're going to an apartment and there's 200 units that they have to budget for.
Mhm.
So CapEx projects and stuff like that we really have to take consideration. There's budget. When are we fixing? When are we repairing it? What kind of programs do we need to put together for them? What kind of inspections do we need to suggest? So there's a lot of things go to it because everything's in bulk. It's not just
Yeah.
one isolated, it's now amplified.
So educate me a little bit, because I imagine that you have, we'll call them clients, right? I mean, they're
Yep.
customers, they're clients, okay? And I would imagine you might have some type of agreement with them where you do work for them all the time, or you're one of two or three of their suppliers. How does that work?
Well, it's an ongoing relationship. Some we do have, like, we're onboarded for vendors, we're licensed, we're insured, we're bonded, we have all the appropriate everything that we need to have. So we have to keep up with that. But it's also it's a business. You got to stay on top of your game and you have to keep giving them that service. You can't just stop and say, oh, you're in a contract, where when you get into like industrial and stuff like that, you can have preventative maintenance contracts that locks you in for years, which is a great partnership to have. We do have some of those here and we're building those all the time, but we don't want to lock a client into us just because they're locked into us. If we're not giving you the service and we're not staying at the top of our game, you know, I don't want you to feel trapped that you have to deal with us. So from a cash flow perspective, it's better to have the contract. But from a customer service perspective, if I'm not hitting your needs, I don't want you to feel tied and obligated and I have to still work with you, like that's because then we're not earning our part. And that's not fair.
Yeah, so the buyer is different. The
hmm
buyer in your world is a professional buyer. They
Correct.
know a lot because they
Yep.
buy the same thing over and over and over again, whether it's
hmm
replacement or repair, maintenance service, whatever it is,
Yep.
because they they buy it over and over again.
Yep.
In the residential world, sometimes that buyer may only replace an air conditioning system or any component in their home once in a lifetime, maybe never. They might move enough where they never have to replace it and they don't have
hmm
to get repaired much. So they don't know a lot. They're not as savvy. So I imagine, and not in a bad way, just as what it is, that the margins are different in your world than it would be
Oh,
residential, but your
yes.
volume is higher
Yes, correct.
potentially.
We have to go off of volume and quantity. We can't go off of just margin, but there's reason for the margin in residential. We do have residential clients, but it's not a majority of our business. That's not the way we started. We started as a business to business, and that just naturally grows. But there is, because there's a lot more time, a lot more education piece that you have to have with the homeowner, where a professional buyer knows all the systems. They normally say, this is the system I want, and get it for me. So it's a different buying process. It's a different knowledge base. It's different time on site. It's different time at install. There's just so much more that's different between the two.
So it would be like National Car Rental or Hertz buying a fleet of vehicles versus me buying a vehicle.
Correct.
Those rental car companies know the industry. They know the vehicles. They know the manufacturers. They know the people who they can get supplied from. And they're going to get that car per unit for less than what I am. But that still could be a good business for the car manufacturers.
It is, but you have to be very careful because you have lower margins, right? So you have to know, because in that example, it's really good that you use cars. So where Enterprise or Hertz, or as you say, okay, I want the base model of, a Defender or something like that, right? So they're not going for the individual user options. They want to make sure it's it's safe, and it's budget friendly for the most part, right? But you want to go get a Defender. Well, I really want leather seats and I want a sunroof. You're going to be an expert literally on what you want. So homeowners now, there's Google out there. So they do a lot of actually investigation on their own. I know I want this kind of option, this kind of option. Some of it's education, but some of it, they come to you and say, I have this situation. I heard this was the right thing for it. I want this exact model number. We've heard it everywhere. So it's a different kind of consumer nowadays, but that is the difference in those for sure.
Sure. And maybe not so much in what you supply your customer, but in multifamily, in apartment units and so forth, the landlord is going to put in the carpeting, the painting, the countertops. They're going to be good enough, but they don't live in it, right? So it's different. When the homeowner wants something, especially when it comes to aesthetics like bathrooms and kitchens, they're going to put more of this into it because of this, their heart, right? Than a landlord, because a landlord, an investor, it's just an investment. It's a business, and they're not going to live in that unit.
Right. Yeah, because at that point, think about it. If you're renting something, you rent a car, you don't care if it has every option you want. You just want the functionality of it. It's the same thing in apartments. They want to make sure their heat works, their cooling works, their plumbing works. And beyond that, they don't care because they don't have to take care of it. Even having tenants change filters, they don't think about it. It's not theirs. And that's why we work with our multifamily on like filter change programs, or, hey, you need to make sure you're going in and changing the filters, because that protects their system, that protects the investment, because the HVAC is one of the most expensive components that they have in that apartment. So you got to do everything you can to protect it and hedge it. And it's just really, tenants aren't thinking about it. I don't think anybody's purposely doing it. They're just not thinking about it. It's not theirs. And they're just like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you do have to maintenance it and take care of it and make sure it's not built, there's not grass clippings all over the AC, and, that filter has to be changed. So it's an interesting concept. Sometimes you see some interesting things. I'll just put it that way.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like renting a car. Do you really care if your boots are dirty when you get in it? No. You're not supposed to ding it, that's for sure. But on the inside, do you care if you drop the fries on the floor? You're going to pick them up quick? No, not my car. I'll just drop it off. And the rental car company doesn't care either, because it's not theirs. So it's just one of those things where no one who is living in it cares. The investor doesn't drive the car or live in the apartment unit. Okay. And the person renting those knows it's not theirs, and it is what it is. So there's actually less emotion all around.
There is less disconnected emotion, but what we are seeing, and this has been a trend post-COVID. So one thing that COVID did, it made people aware that they actually do need to care about their air quality. So we're even seeing management companies that are starting to clean ductwork during turns. like, okay, we need to clean this ductwork. Like they're actually looking at the ductwork and saying, okay, is there a lot of dust buildup? Is there a lot of this? Or tenants now come they're like, hey, I don't think my ducts are very clean, but they're actually looking at that. So it's made people aware on the property management side and tenants themselves, like, we need to be paying attention to this. But they still don't change their filter. But if they see that, that ductwork is really dirty, or, you look in the return and it's really, I mean, you can tell when they're dirty. I mean, they look like cobwebs you're like, I don't even understand what's happening. It's just like this dust bowl thing. And, they are paying attention to it now.
Yeah. So you have this title of the boss lady. I want to call you a media queen because you guys do podcasts and you have written a book with Kevin Harrington. I want to hear about the podcast first and go into the book, because these are media things. These show everybody. They depict authority, credibility. If you're writing a book and you're talking on a podcast, you've got something to say about what you do in the industry and people will listen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we created the podcast, because we need to reach more people and let them know. And you're like, what's going on? Like right now, we're really focused on the education of HVAC and plumbing and what preventative maintenance. It's kind of like our learning series, right? And it's going to evolve. We're going to bring on other guests from other HVAC companies or other people in the industry, talking about CapEx projects and doing all that, because it's really interesting. And it actually makes us learn even more doing the podcast, because we have to prep for those podcasts and we know what we know in our head as an industry, but you're going to take an extra step and be like, what's new in technology? What's new in this? Like right now, we're talking about the new 2L refrigerants, and that keeps evolving and changing. And so the more it makes us stay up to date on it, and it gives us a way to communicate with our clients in a quick thing, because not everybody wants to look at an email. They would rather really get to know you and then really hear what you have to say and watch a video for it. That's kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's interesting you say it, and I smile because that's why I wrote my book. This podcast isn't to promote me or my book today, even though I do talk about it a lot. But, I wrote this book called The Radio Fisherman's Podcast Playbook because of my experience in radio. And now with digital today, we can use videos and podcasts to educate, and people sit in their lazy boy on their couch in bed doing this, and they want to be educated before they engage with you. And so you're doing exactly what I tell all home service companies to do, is record videos, post them, do podcasts, and establish yourself as the authority. And you're doing it. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. It's been an interesting journey. I'm like, I'm not that old. And then you start getting into it. You're like, I'm kind of old because I don't understand all this technology. So,
you're not as old as me.
Yeah. I mean, you're
I
on it.
I do it for a living.
Exactly. And I'm like, I don't know. How do I do this? And I'm like, good gosh.
We'll figure it out. Right. And what's funny is, speaking of getting old, I'm 25 now. Yeah. I've
a couple times over.
A couple times. You're right.
A couple years.
A couple times over. And I've had to reinvent myself and my business multiple times. And if you don't, you'll get run over. So let's talk a little bit about this before your book. Speaking about reinventing yourself and your business. I'm sure on a regular basis, you get into a room with the rest of the team and say, okay, we're here, but we see this. We have to kind of change now. So let's take a step back so we can go 2 steps forward. Can you tell me a little bit about what might be going on with that today in your world?
When is it not going on in our world? Because you have to stay up with it. Because you're right. Because if you don't, you'll just be left behind. The world does not wait. The world keeps rolling. And that's actually what we've really focused on the last year or two is really writing our processes. We spent a lot of extra time in the business. Like everybody knows how to do stuff, right? Like you verbally, here's what you do, and you just kind of naturally do it. Now, if you want to make it really challenging on yourself, especially I tell business owners starting out, I had somebody just ask me this the other day, and they're like, what's your biggest piece of advice? I'm starting this business. I was like, document everything you do now, because when you get to the size we are, and now you have to go document everything you do, holy cow, Is it kind of a nightmare? But it's necessary because in order for everybody to be able to do what I do or what Dave does or something like that, we need to get it out of our heads because nobody can read our minds. So it's our way to communicate to our team. Here's how we process this. Here's how we do this, because we created a different entire service. What do I want to call, like a service process to be able to service these clients as fast as we can. So they have to learn that. So that's our way to communicate to our team. And man, do I wish I did it 10, 12 years ago. My life would be much easier right now, but we're almost done. We're on the flip side of it, but it is a process. It's not very, when you start having to take it out of you and put it down on paper, you will realize how much you miss. And then you go back and then you fill in the blanks because it's natural to you. So if you write down a process and you say, okay, here's the process, you're going to write it down. And you're like, that's pretty simple. Hand it to somebody that doesn't know what it is and see if it's simple enough that they can do it. What you're going to find out, there's a lot of gaps and steps and judgment that you don't document that first time.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Because you know it.
Yeah. So SOPs are very important. Any procedure, any practice, policies, everything. Yep. And, it's interesting you bring it up because right now we're in the process at Checkapro at our company of downloading as much as I can out of my brain because I do a lot of things in the organization in my chair that only I know how to do. And if something were to happen to me, people would be like, well, Jim's head got cut off and we can't download it. Right. So
that's right.
So what are we going to do? And, it's important because we have to McDonaldize everything, right? It has to be like McDonald's, which McDonald's, anyone can be hired, obviously, because we've seen some of the people working at McDonald's, no offense to people, but anybody, whether you're a teenager or not, you can work at McDonald's because they have the processes and anyone can learn to cook the fries and the burgers and put in a bag and take the money and whatever. And it's just a system. And so once you get the system tweaked, like screw down, then everything else is easy, but you constantly have to be tweaking the system.
That's right. You have to do the system. And that's what we told, our team. It's not about, hey, I don't want to work. That's not what it's about. I said, it is irresponsible as owners to not have our jobs documented, that if something happens to one or both of us, that you guys cannot cease to continue on. That is our responsibility to you guys, because there should be, here's how we do it. Here's, if a new owner comes in, or we have, we're working on succession planning. Like if something happens to one of us or, both of us, then who's taking over the business? Where's all the stuff for it? Who has the keys to the kingdom? Because the last thing we want to do, we have all these loyal employees that have been here, and then something happens to us and then they're just out of a job and their career's gone and all that. That's not being responsible as an owner. So that's another reason that we do it. And I tell people, like, especially new people get afraid, it feels like, when you say, I need you to document this process for me, because they feel like you're going to document it and then you're going to get rid of them later, or now you have the flexibility to get rid of them. I said, here's the thing. And we use the example, you get hit by a bus. Everybody kind of laughs about it, but serious, if something happened to you and your coworker needed to fill in your spot, could they do it? And if the answer is no, then we need to document it out, because it's setting up the team. Now, on the flip side, we also say, look, our rule is to duplicate times 3. We want to duplicate each one of you 3 times. So, and people want to get promoted and stuff like that. Part of that is being able to teach somebody else to do your job. So if you have a new coworker come on, wouldn't it be great to hand them literally the playbook for their position and say, here's the processes, here's how you do it. It's going to cut your training time down. It's going to cut frustration down, and it's going to make it easier for us to scale and grow a lot quicker. And then easier for the people that are really help training them, because it's to the point now I can't train everybody now. Like it's just not, I'm Superwoman, but dang, like it's a lot. So documenting that down, lets it get out. It really gives security to everybody. So that first time we normally have to kind of not really de-escalate, but explain it. And then when they see that, they understand. It's not a, now you can get rid of me. It's no, that's so we can continue to grow and you continue to move.
Yeah. And beyond that, you didn't touch upon it, but I'm sure you thought about it, is your company will be worth a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So if you decided to transfer it to another entity,
Correct.
it's much easier when everything's in place. If it's in chaos, it can still be done. It'll be worth less, or it'll take longer to clean it all up before it can be transferred. So if you want to make a
Correct.
quick change, it's nice when it's all tidy. And, they call it turnkey, right? It's like buying a property. In your world, if someone is an investor and they buy a property that's turnkey, is totally different than, well, you can buy it. It's kind of a mess and you're going to have to put a lot into it. Still not a bad investment, but it's not worth as much.
Right. And people don't have a lot of time. Investors don't have a lot of time. They either the path of least resistance, but we're creating that system so we can duplicate ourselves. We're about maxing out our position where we're at in our current building. It's now, okay, we're going to need to do a satellite location or we're going to need to franchise the business. We're kind of evaluating both. It's the system. Like you said, it's McDonald's. It's the system. It's just, if you have the system together, we're working with a software developer right now to literally create a software that runs calls the way we run calls, because we work within the confines of the software that we've had for a while, but it's not set up. Everything's pretty much set up for residential point of sale. We are not point of sale. We are, the good old fashioned, let's send you a bill and it comes back with that. I mean, residential we're point of sale, but we do so much more of the corporate style. The systems can do it, but they don't do it efficiently. There's a lot of workarounds. So it's finding the needs of the business, creating that system, and then making sure we make the software match what we need it to do.
Yeah. I want to talk about your book. One of the original members of Shark Tank on ABC was Kevin Harrington. Kevin Harrington. A lot of people don't know Kevin Harrington. He was one of the he was literally one of the original ones on that show on ABC. And he's a great entrepreneur. He helps other entrepreneurs. And you wrote a book with him. Tell me about it.
I did. We actually got a copy of. We just did the meeting, so this is like the draft copy, and you do like the media day and all that kind of stuff. So that's a fun, exciting thing. And this is really like, it was a collaboration project, and even the other authors in it. It was really, really phenomenal. I was like, oh, I thought I had a story, and I was like, I don't know if I got a good enough story. Like you start hearing the other ones, you're like, that's a really good story. So I would definitely recommend it for that. But it was a good thing because it's a highlight of what it took to get here, because we're sitting at a point in our business. I think it's less than 2% of businesses hit our dollar amount a year. And then I think it's less than 1% are woman owned and ran by a woman. So we're in a very rare category here. So people are looking, how did you do it? How can I do it? So there's actually like tips and like, here's some resources you should go look at. You should check this part out because this is something, this theory or a skill that I learned really helped me build it, because you have to keep working on yourself to get to this point. So it really talks about the journey. And then it also has advice in there because I want it to be something that's going to help people be able to help themselves, right? Like really be able to be like, okay, I can see that as a resource. I can take advantage of it, and you can learn it yourself. What we do, and that's the thing, we build it by grit. I mean, we started out at the kitchen table, and like, Dave knows, the table's actually upstairs. It needs a little work, but one day it's going to get refinished, and it's going to have the company logo, and it's going to be sitting in some sort of room. But, you start about that. And when you start a business, I think what's interesting is you don't know how big it's going to get. You want it to get big, right? But you don't understand what's going to take to get there. You think it's just going to be magic and rainbows. When you start out, you're all excited. No, there's a process. There's a theory. It's hard. You have to have grit. You have down days. You have up days. Then you start getting into staff. Now you got to have your staff on site. Like, we really focus on our culture here because the people are going to be the one that helps pull the company forward. So we have to spend time on our culture. So it's an interesting process. It really is. And it's just everybody's journey is different.
Mm.
And that's kind of what it's just a correlation of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to reading the book. Katie, the boss lady, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I appreciate it. Let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Whenever. Give me a call.